Yeah,
All right.
which will be an hour and a half.
So I'd like to call this, I forget the date, Wednesday meeting of the
18th.
18th February meeting of the planning board to order. Just want to make a note to any members of the public who have joined. We will not be taking public comment at this meeting. This is an opportunity for the planning board to get an update on the comp plan and to get an update on the status of proposed warrant articles. We don't have a lot of time where the planning board gets to shape warrant articles, so I want to maximize the amount of time we have to ask questions and prod the drafts of the warrant articles as they are now. We will be having public hearings with public comment coming up on all the warrant articles once the warrant closes. So please be patient with us. We have received all of the written comments, particularly on the project in Coolidge Corner, both for and against. All of those can be visible on the agenda part of the website for this meeting. So if you're concerned whether or not your letter was posted, we've received them all via email and they're all being posted on that website for record. And we have read and we'll continue to read them as they come in. With that, the first item is matters not on the agenda. Are there any members first of the planning board who have comments on matters not on the agenda?
Steve, do you want to make a brief comment about the inclusionary zone? Should we put that off?
I don't have anything to add at the moment.
Okay. Very good.
All right, and it is said we would not take public comment on the warrant articles. Doesn't mean I wouldn't take a public comment on something not on the agenda. If there is someone who has a question, please use the react button to raise your hand and Cameron can unmute you.
Matt, if you don't mind, I do have a couple of comments I wanted to make.
Please.
We tried very hard to include everybody's comment letters on 26 Pleasant Street. Today at 3 p.m., there's going to be a meeting with Kara, myself, and Cameron, with anyone from precinct 17 or any other precincts that would like to meet with us to discuss 26 Pleasant Street. I would like to remind everybody that it's 10 citizen petitioners who are allowed to submit a warrant article. It's not up to the planning department or even the planning board or the select board about who submits a warrant article. They can submit a warrant article and then it's up to town meeting to decide whether to approve it or not to approve it. In this particular warrant article on 26 Pleasant Street, please keep in mind that even if it were to be approved, it would need to go through the whole Board of Appeals process, which means a design advisory team, planning board, ZBA. So with that, I'll stop and see if any of the planning board members have any comments or anyone else. So our first...
I can't see if any hands are raised. Let me know if I'm not seeing something.
Yeah, I don't see any. And our first agenda item is an update on the comp plan by Jay Collins. You can see he's already on the screen. Hi, Jake.
Hi, Polly. Thanks for having me this morning. I will keep it brief, but I am going to share my screen. So really, the purpose of this presentation is to kind of explain how you can participate, make your voice heard during the comprehensive planning process this month. This is actually probably one of my easiest presentations because you all kind of have an idea of what's going on, what we've been doing. And of course, I'm happy to take any questions about the engagement phase or just the comprehensive planning process at the end. So what we've done, I'm not going to read all this, but I just kind of wanted to share everything we've done over the past just over 18 months now. I believe you have this in the agenda packet. If you want to review it on your own time, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. As you're probably aware, the comprehensive plan will set the 15-year vision for the town, help us develop policies, provide a framework to guide future zoning changes. I always like to remind people that we are not rezoning with the comprehensive plan. Rather, we are recommending actions. And then it will act as a reference for the town in prioritizing future investment. People like to hear that given the budget discussions that are ongoing. So this is actually our second engagement phase. The first one, we went out in the fall of 2024 with the visioning. As you can see, it was very successful. We had over 10,000 individual comments. We had workshops and farmers markets, pop-ups, et cetera, et cetera. We had an online survey. That's, of course, where we get the bulk of our responses in any outreach. We have one going now. I will send you a link to that after. But we are now over halfway through the planning process and entering a really critical phase where we need to hear from you. From our visioning, we kind of established these plan themes. I'm sure many of you are aware of them, and many of them would fall under kind of the purview of the planning board. As you're aware, the planning board will receive a presentation and opportunity to vote on draft and final versions of the plan before it gets sent to the state. So our winter engagement, which is ongoing, you may be wondering why we're doing it now. We are beginning to put pen to paper, and the feedback we receive will help inform the plan's goals, recommendations, and strategies. We, of course, have a wide array of expertise on the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, including Linda Hamlin, but we need to hear from those it directly impacts. And then, of course, doing proactive outreach is always a good thing and helps strengthen partnerships as we move into the implementation phase. So there are a few different activities we have planned during the month of February. We will need you to comment on a draft vision statement, share your priorities across those plan themes I mentioned. So, you know, housing across all life stages, mobility and accessibility, equity, et cetera, et cetera. The more interesting pieces come on the final two bullet points, which are provide your opinion on future housing and commercial growth. So we have something as simple as this chart, or this line where you point where exactly you think you would like to see the town go over the next 15 years. Of course, we educate you beforehand. And then fourth is we indicate preferred types and locations for residential development. So we have a worksheet for we've broken the town down into 5 different areas. We have a worksheet for each respective area. And when you want to hear just what you think is compatible, what do you think is appropriate, where you think there may be opportunities for transformation, as well as where you may think there are opportunities for preservation. So right now we have a couple of ways to get involved. And the first one is what I really want to highlight with you. It's hosting a meeting in a box. And what that really is we provide you all the materials to host a meeting with your group, whether it's a neighborhood group, you know, a special interest group or community group. We give you a script, we give you the background information, you walk your group through it, and then submit it to us. The really cool part about this is that we have an opportunity for you to kind of respond to open-ended questions of your choosing. So you can really get at what your group needs. So for a neighborhood group, you may say, we have this lot that we don't know what's going to happen with it. Here's where we think it should go. Whereas if it's a community group, maybe it's a green space group, you could talk about park access or open space. The easier option, which I would encourage you all to do if you can't host a meeting in a box, is an online survey. It tackles all the same questions as the meeting in the box. It's these 4 activities. It does take some time. We've heard good things about it, and people who have made it to the end have said it was fun. So I would encourage you to take a look at that and you know, make your voice heard. We do need to hear from you. So if you can't contribute now, there's really no need to worry. So we will be returning to you this spring to get feedback on plan recommendations and strategies that impact the work you do. So as you can see, we've taken all the previous planning efforts, whether it be the housing production plan, open space plan, everything. And we're kind of taking that, synthesizing it with all the feedback, working with departments, and then coming to you. You are in a little bit different position because you will receive, I believe, 2 chances to comment on the draft plan. one likely on your own and another in a joint hearing with the select board and steering committee. So hopefully our goal is to refine it and have a plan either approved or finalized by July of 2026. And in the presentation, I have just included some helpful links if you want to learn more about the comprehensive plan. If you want to see any of the work we've done, we record all of our meetings, take the survey, or if you're interested in hosting a meeting in a box, I would encourage you to look at this last link and feel free to reach out to me with any questions. And like I said, I will keep it brief. So that concludes my presentation.
Matt has his hand up.
Matt. Are you there, Matt?
He's Matt, unmute. Oh, he's almost there.
Sorry, I was in the audience. Cameron had to promote me. I rejoined from my laptop. So that was just me letting Cameron know that,
Oh,
that I came back. But thank you for that overview. I was able to do the survey this weekend. My sense is to do it well takes a good 45 minutes to
Okay,
be
yeah.
thoughtful in the open response, but it's well worth the time. I think it's well organized. Some good prompts. So the members of the board who haven't done it yet, it's a great opportunity. Steve.
It's Matt. Jake, just to clarify something you said earlier, that the planning board will vote on the comprehensive plan before it goes to the state. Am I correct in thinking that the planning board actually has to formally vote to approve the comprehensive plan and that's it? I mean, you also said there would be a joint hearing with the select board and I'm not sure, did you also say the advisory committee?
the steering committee, yes.
The steering committee.
Yes, for
But the only formal vote to adopt or approve the plan actually comes from the planning board?
to send it to the state, yes. It only requires planning board approval.
Okay. And when you were talking about I know there's like 50 people here, but you're expecting the planning board in terms of reviewing the draft, et cetera. That's a job for the planning board. We need to do that, correct?
Yes. So as I mentioned, we will check in a couple of times with the planning board, make sure we're on the same page, and just ensure that there's alignment among all boards and commissions. But of course, you will have you being the planning board, will have an extra opportunity to review from, say, like other boards, like the Conservation Commission.
Okay. Well, first off, I'm glad to see as a comment that housing was listed first. I don't know whether those things are in any order, but housing being an important priority, increasing housing and making sure our commercial areas remain vital or get more vital. And I think those two are linked because more rooftops, I think the way commercial developers look at it, make for better commercial success. So
Yes.
there's definitely a connection. So heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Steve. Blair.
Yes, thank you. I have two comments. One is just to back up what you were saying, Matt. I think the survey is really interesting, has a lot of detail, and it's not just check your box. So I would encourage everyone on the planning board to do it. It's really, I think, well done. So thank you to whoever put together that survey. Secondly, and just to put you on the spot, given the fact that the planning board is going to be asked to review a number of zoning warrant articles, do you have any preliminary guidance in terms of how responses from members of the public have shaped, I guess, the two issues that Steve just identified, the need for more housing and vital commercial. Is that strongly held positions of your people who've taken the time to comment to the to the comp plan people?
So I can only speak to the visioning responses to the housing questions we asked there. And some of the takeaways there were that we need more housing across life stages. So we need housing for, young people to enter, not only young people to enter, but also for people who may be downsizing, who want to free up their space. That was a big, there was a lot of support for that. Affordable housing, capital A, there was support for that. As for this plan, I don't want to speak too soon. I've seen some responses that indicate that there is a desire for some growth in town, not to maintain the status quo. But beyond that, I don't think it would be wise for me to speak.
Right, okay, because today we are going to be looking at the ADU article. We're also looking at an overlay zone in the Coolidge Corner neighborhood, which seems fairly tightly bounded. And then there's the possible warrant up in Chestnut Hill commercial area study, which has been controversial in the neighborhood. So there's a lot of things that are coming to the planning board, and I appreciate the fact that you'd like us just to deal with it without a lot of comments from you.
I may have missed this particular detail. The results of the survey, when the survey ends, are those going to be shared as a report document of some kind that we'll be able to just check in on?
Yes, absolutely. So the consultant team will kind of conduct their analysis and then provide their findings at a public meeting. That's, of course, you're welcome to join. If after that, we can, of course, share the materials and the key takeaways.
Yeah, to Blair's point, and well, you probably know this if you did the survey, there was a question about I think there are 5 or 6 different ways to achieve the number of units established. 7 tall buildings or 100 short buildings. So I'm exaggerating, but I'll be really interested to see how many people answer the survey and then how the responses kind of size those up, because a whole lot of different choices in there in that question.
Absolutely.
Great. Any other questions from members of the board for Jake and the comp plan team? We appreciate your update. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And Linda, thanks for representing the board in that process.
It was a good summary, Jake. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, our next agenda item is the proposed overlay district for 26 Pleasant Street. The warrant closes on February 25th, and we've tried very hard to take all the warrant articles that we know about that are probably going to be submitted and have the planning board just learn about them. And then, of course, they will be advertised in the newspaper and there'll be public hearing. Not only will the planning board opine on the articles, but of course the select board, the advisory committee, the subcommittee of the advisory committee, the HAB, and several other committees will all make recommendations to town meeting. And then it will be up to town meeting whether the warrant articles are approved or not. With that, I will turn it over to Attorney Allen.
Before we get there, Polly, I have one question more broadly. And I don't know if this is something that the attorney will be speaking to or not, but how is this not just spot zoning, and why isn't this housing issue being more broadly spread over that area? I'm not taking a position on that. I'm just asking that question.
Okay, well, let's have the presentation. A lot of you haven't most of you haven't had any presentation on this proposal. So let's turn it over to Attorney Allen and his team, which is his colleague Taylor Lee from his firm, and also the architect Michael Liu, and the developer Todd Nordblom, and also Margaret Murphy. So I believe that the reason Taylor Lee shows up several times is that she's actually, I guess, helped other people get online, something like that. I don't know. But with that, Cameron, if you can, I guess, let all the people for this project show themselves and be able to speak, that would be great. Thank you.
If the person who is going to present can raise their hand. Oh, there we go.
And also, Todd, can you raise your hand?
Here I am.
And somewhere in the stratosphere is Michael Liu, who should raise his hand also when he shows up. But he'll also show up as Taylor Lee for some time. But so let me just kick this off. And I want to underscore what Polly has said. This meeting sort of took us by surprise because it's so early in the process. This is a very preliminary view. The warrant article has been written and it will be filed with and the signatures have been collected and will be filed with the town clerk either today or tomorrow.
Can I stop you right there real quick? Just because every single member of your team is called Taylor Lee, for record, please introduce yourself and where you live or reside in the town if appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Point, Matt, and we will correct that going forward. I don't know how that happened this time, but Jeffrey Allen, I'm the attorney representing the developer. I'm also a lifelong Brookline resident living at 908 West Roxbury Parkway in Brookline. And Taylor Lee is with me from my office. We have the architects, us, so forth. And in general broad stripes, this is a parcel that's been owned for a long time by the Nordblom Company. And Todd Fremont Smith is here from the Nordblom Company. They have a long history in Brookline. Todd, why don't you just for a second introduce your
president? I did. Thanks, Jeff. And I was able to change my name from Taylor Lee, although it's a better name than Todd Fremont Smith. So I'm not Todd Nordblom. I'm Todd Fremont Smith. I'm a 30-year employee of the Nordblom family, which is a 100-year-old family real estate company headquartered in Burlington. I do have a slideshow, a very brief slideshow that Jeff and I had put together. Why don't I try to share that?
Yeah, Cameron, if you can let him share his screen, that would be great.
Should be able to. Tell me if you can see something coming up.
Yeah, starting to come up. There it is.
Okay, great. So again, Todd Fremont Smith with Nordblom Company. We're here today, as Jeff said, and Taylor, his associate, with Michael Liu and Michael Bro and Anthony Viverito of TAT, the architectural team, based here in Boston. The Nordblom Company, as I began to say, is a 101-year-old from a fifth-generation real estate company headquartered in Burlington. Some of you might know our Wegmans anchored 3rd Ave project out there. We've got a long history in Coolidge Corner. The family began acquiring properties in Coolidge Corner back in the 20s and 30s. And so we've got some very deep roots in Coolidge Corner. These are just some of our buildings. This is Green Street, the Regent, which is 65 units. So again, sort of older pre-war buildings. This is a building we built back in 2002 called Marion Square. Many of you might remember Pelham Hall. Pelham Hall is the building. When I was a kid, there used to be a Saab dealership where Sotheby's now is. But the family, for estate reasons, actually sold this building a few years ago and established a family trust with the money, and that's a whole different wing of the company. But so the proposed project, Jeff, should I just continue?
Yeah, just quickly, and then I'll run through the zoning.
Okay, all right. So this is a parking lot, which is just off Coolidge Corner on Pleasant Street, 62 surface parking spaces. That again, has just been part of the family holdings for since the 30s, 40s. It's a nice parking lot. I think we've come to the conclusion that it's really not the highest and best use for 2 acres of land in. Sorry, it's not 2 acres. It's 0.6 acres of land in Coolidge Corner. So we'd like to take a question to town meeting, which is essentially, may we please build 103 units of multifamily housing on this parking lot. There are 62 spaces there now. There'd be 60 spaces going back when the project's complete. And as Jeff will talk, just in terms of massing, I'll let the architectural team talk about architecture and massing, but the proposal is for 7 stories, 100% electric design. And in terms of why the town might want this, you're dealing with a long-term partner in Coolidge Corner with the Nordblom family. We would be fully compliant with town bylaws for affordable housing on site. The massing that we're proposing, we believe, is consistent with Coolidge Corner, with the neighborhood. And taxes would grow from about $30,000 a year to about $600,000 a year. So there's an enormous step up in taxes, real estate taxes that would be collected each year by the town.
Let me just jump in here if I can, Todd.
Yeah.
What you are seeing is and we can stop sharing the screen for a minute.
Yeah.
What you're seeing is a concept of what we would build on that site or like to build on that site. The zoning contains the proposed zoning contains a full 509 review by the planning board and ZBA. So although this is what we've conceptually designed for the property, and although this is what we're thinking of, after the zoning passes, there's not going to be any shovels in the ground. We're going to have to go through 509 and the whole zoning process with a design advisory team and the like. So this may change, may not change, maybe a little changes, lots of changes. We don't know, but we thought it would be irresponsible to go forward without a design in mind. And it was a conscious decision in consultation with the planning department, staff and so forth, that we included a full zoning review subject to 5.09. But what the zoning does is allow an FAR of 4.0, height of 85 feet, and parking pursuant to Article 6 of the zoning bylaw, but can be modified by special permit. So as you can see, what we did is change this. The zoning changes this to allow the effective use of creating housing, realistic parameters that would encourage a housing development, multifamily housing development that we think the site is appropriate for. But the specific design, specific contours of the design of the proposal are going to be determined in the normal zoning process of 5.09, special permits maybe for setbacks, special permits maybe for parking. But what we have accepted over 2 years ago when we started this process internally is the parking lot is not in the best use and is certainly not going to be a continued use. When we looked at as of right uses and we looked at options, we felt that this multifamily housing was the best use for both us and the town. Given the mandate to create housing, given Brookline's mandate to hopefully create tax revenue, we thought that this was the best use for it, and that's why we have gone out. And as I said, we have secured the signatures necessary, and we'll be filing a warrant article to rezone this parcel into an overlay district. So if you want, I can ask Michael Liu. Michael, are you there?
Can anyone hear me?
Yep. Can you
Okay.
just briefly take us through the design concept that you worked on? And most of you, I think, I know Steve does and other people know that Michael has a long history of designing some very aesthetically pleasing and functional buildings in Brookline. So, Michael.
Michael, please
Yeah,
also
okay.
just start with your name and your business address since you're the architect.
So I'm Michael Liu. I live in Newton, Massachusetts, and with me are my two colleagues, former colleagues, Anthony Viverito and Michael Bro, the project designer. In this particular, not to overstate the obvious, I mean the site is an L-shaped site, and we are bordered by a variety of building types, but most significantly, there are two larger buildings, the BHA building, which is an 8-9-story building on Pleasant Street to the north, which is at the top of the sheet, and then, of course, Pelham Hall, which is an 8-story building at the corner of Beacon and Pleasant Street. Also, I should point out that to the rear of the site, then there's the white apartment building, which is in common ownership with this particular site, although it's a separate parcel. One thing I would observe about Coolidge Corner is that as you get closer and closer to the commercial center, the buildings tend to get closer to the street, so that in the commercial center and coming up on on Pleasant Street, the buildings are 0 lot line. And then as you move forward more into the residential areas, typically what you'll have is a kind of a green verge, shallow planted verge between the building and the sidewalk. And so this site occupies kind of an intermediate area there. Also, I should point out that the building types generally, although there is a variety of building types, the 3-story buildings and some of the taller buildings, for example, Pelham Hall, tend to be kind of a flat facade that's animated with vertical elements, either bays or shallow projections or recesses in them. But they sort of tend to create a kind of a vertical striping within that. And so we've taken our cues, from that. And in particular, also I should point out that this particular slide is a little obsolete in that the commercial 2-story building at the corner of John and Pleasant Street has been demolished. So where the cursor is now, there is no building there. But as I'm sure you know, there is proposed to be a new development, which I think one can reasonably assume would be of some scale, at least comparable to that of the Pelham Hall and the BHA building. So we think of the site, at least so far, as a kind of a part of an ensemble of those buildings that's also transitioning back into the residential areas. And finally, I just reiterate what Attorney Allen said, is that we're not proposing a definitive design. This is just the result of a design study in terms of what we think would be reasonable, and we're anticipating that it will evolve as we move through the process. Could we advance to the next slide? So here is what we have in mind, and you can see that that it would sort of conforms in general to the scale of those surrounding buildings, Pelham Hall and the BHA building, and also similarly has a kind of a similar relationship to the street in terms of its setback, and also in terms of the facade form. Maybe we can go to the next one. We're moving around. The entrances we think would be, the residential entrance we think would be appropriate to be on where the cursor just was on Pleasant Street. There would be an entrance to the parking which is within the envelope of the building on the right where the cursor is presently. And then if we advance to the next slide, you can see this is the interior of the building, that interior elbow. And there's a kind of stepping to the right, which creates a kind of a roof terrace. The service of the building would be along John Street, close to where the entrance is to a second drive through to a parking level within the building. All of the parking in the building is concealed within the envelope of the building, however, at least seen from the street side. Could we go to the next slide? So here, I think this is an articulated rendering, which the intent is to give you a sense of what we think the design sensibility might be, in that we would like to design a building that is, clearly contemporary, of the current age, but which refers to the traditional buildings in the area, at least in terms of scale and some of the strategies that you find of buildings of similar size, particularly Pelham Hall. So you have what is really a flat front building, which is further animated and whose scale is broken down with devices such as bays and the balconies, which would be imitative of the kind of vertical approach of elements which are layered over what is otherwise a relatively simple form. Then there's another aspect of this, in that we're thinking maybe we could use the amenity spaces at the 7th floor, which essentially brings the cornice level down, the kind of implied cornice level down to the 6th floor, because it's articulated separately and then reinforced by the elements of the bays. Also, at the ground floor, we would have a facade which is very glassy and very transparent. We can see into the building. That, of course, is in keeping with I think our idea or our feeling, the spirit of the Coolidge Corner interim planning overlay district design guidelines, where you have more transparency, excuse me, at the first floor. And you can see in this slide also where the entrance is on Pleasant Street. So you'd have an animation of that pedestrian level, particularly when you're looking down from the Coolidge Corner. You would have a continuation of the sort of sense of the commercial treatment of the first floor. These amenity spaces in this particular case. You also get a sense here, I think, of that shallow landscaped verge between the face of the building and the sidewalk. And I think that just to give you a sense of where the design is coming from. And again, here you get a better sense of that relationship between the building and the sidewalk and the animation of the sidewalk pedestrian level with a transparent first floor.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Can I ask, just backing up one slide,
sorry.
foreground left, is that model showing the Waldo Durgan building? Is that what that design actually looks like? I don't know if they're going to build it or not, but
I don't think they've been permitted yet. I know they haven't been. So I think what I go back a slide, I think is what.
There we go, right on the left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what, yeah,
okay.
that's a,
There is a massing strategy that they've gotten approved, right? So that you show some aerial views without that massing in context. This is the first and only place you show kind of the context of what it will be like when that property on the corner is developed relative to yours, which obviously then bookends this proposed project with two tall buildings. It's just helpful context.
Matt, we originally showed more of the context with that proposal, but then recently we learned that proposal is going back to the drawing board. It's going to be redesigned. So we try to eliminate it as much as possible because we don't know what it's going to be or what its timeline is going to be.
100% agree. Thank you. Did you have any final thoughts?
No, I think I failed to mention the obvious. Of course, the proposed zoning totally embraces the affordable housing requirements of the bylaw, and they'll all be on site. I may have omitted that, but so it's just the bare bones zoning, FAR, height, parking, and the like, but not doing. I think one of the great misconceptions in some of the letters you have gotten is that this proposal, and it's unfortunate that because of this meeting, people are commenting on our zoning proposal and they've never read it. But I think it's unfortunate. People think that we're doing away with the permitting requirements of the zoning bylaw. Just the opposite. We made an intentional decision to incorporate them into the overlay district and not eliminate them, but abide by them.
Great, thank you. I have a question maybe for Polly. I'm in the background with doing some research. The Waldo Durgan project is within the Waldo Durgan overlay district, right? So that was a similar opportunity to upzone a particular set of parcels in order to generate a different use of that site, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so this is in many ways similar. And a lot of the things within that seem like we could potentially borrow, the rationale. I like the way that particular one was written. And then the attorney, Alan, the zoning that you're seeking to modify it's neutral as to the size and quantity and type of unit. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay.
It only, in terms of size, it only speaks to FAR.
Okay, so I'm just
and height. I'm sorry, height and FAR.
Yeah, for everyone who's looking at that design, there may not be amenity spaces, right? That this is a particular opportunity to look at I'm assuming what you're showing are luxury multifamily units where the amenities are part of that, but it could actually be a different mix of units that might have a different overall use of the different floors. So we don't want to have comments on the design because it's not a design, it's just a placeholder. It's really the opportunity to develop this site.
We actually had an internal debate that took about 4 months, whether we should go with a zoning overlay district with no proposed design or with a proposed design. And we
Yeah.
decided we
You
would.
can't win either way, but just
Exactly.
for us to remind ourselves that the zoning is what we're going to be asked to comment on, not the specifics of the building. To the extent that the zoning dictates some aspects of the building, that's relevant. So the order that I saw was Blair, then Andrea, then Steve. So we'll start with Blair.
Okay, so I want to underline the issue that this is about zoning and not a specific proposal. And I have basically 3 comments. One is that why not include a ground floor commercial, at least as allowed? I'm not sure if that's allowed under current zoning or not, Jeffrey. But since this is not a specific design, that might be a suggestion, since the town is interested in incentivizing commercial use. And and then the other question, and the second question I have is why not a more extensive envelope for the rezoning? I understand that your client is interested in a specific parcel, but the zoning that you're proposing is about promoting additional housing in town, that it's transit oriented. So, and maybe this is more of a question that goes to the planning office about why feedback hasn't included a more extensive envelope. Third, I have a question that regards how much of a building could be built here under existing zoning since of FAR of 1, since that's been a issue that the planning board has been unhappy with on a project that was down in St. Mary's, where an FAR of 1 really limited how much could be done on a 1-story commercial area with adjacent, I think it was 5 or 6-story townhouses. So I think that might be informative in terms of town meeting debate, is to also indicate if you didn't get a zoning change, is it a 2-story building? And you don't have to address that immediately, but I think that would be an important information to provide to town meeting when they are debating this. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. We'll take Andrea's question next.
Okay, I wanted to repeat what Blair said about the commercial use, that I think there's an opportunity to include it as part of the zoning, the way that it's done in other zoning elements that we've been looking at, especially with the MBTA Act, with the 60% frontage rule. I think there's an opportunity to continue the commercial zone, continuing across the street from the library. And I know that the Waldo Durgan Park also had a commercial use as part of their zoning on the ground floor. That would help activate the street and not just having big windows with lights and gyms with empty spaces inside. Secondly, I know it's a rendering, but I didn't see any street parking, and I know there's probably not any there now, or maybe there is because of the 2 parking lot entrances, but is that something that would be put back in? And the architect also mentioned the 0 lot line, but it looked like in the rendering that there would be a setback with some plantings, or is that not the case?
So it is the case that there would be a setback. The setback is shallower along, well, in this particular iteration, it's shallower on Pleasant Street, about 7.5 feet. It's wider on John Street, 15 feet in this particular version.
I kind of think it would be the other way around, with Pleasant Street being a more primary street than John. Is there any provision for setbacks on the top floor?
In the setback on the top floor right now is the only significant setback is the 7th floor is setback on the south side to create that amenity roof deck.
Right, but is that in the zoning proposal?
No.
No. So I'm just wondering if there should be some setback criteria.
all of that can be accomplished without being in the zoning proposal pursuant to 509 as we go through design review. I don't believe this.
Okay.
But I think that does speak to the issue of moderating the height, and I'm wondering whether I would underline Andrea's comment myself.
Blair, are you proposing that it could go higher, but then?
No, I'm proposing that I thought your point was well taken, that some type of stepping back of the building as it goes to the 7th floor would be important in terms of modulating height.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are, I don't want to jump in here, but those are the exact type of issues that I think will be debated and decided as we go through the 509 process with the design advisory team.
Yep.
Really don't involve the language of the zoning.
Okay.
And I just wanted to go back to the setback, the street level setback, because the Waldo Durgan project did show a nice wider sidewalk on Pleasant Street and had a wide planting strip as well. So it's not necessarily the case that all the buildings go to a 0 lot line. And that's all. Thank you.
I agree, Andrea. Steve, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks. Couple of questions and comments. First, one specific question in the zoning warrant article proposed itself. In one place, it says that both the planning board and the zoning board will have oversight of the project, but elsewhere in the warrant article, it appears to be saying that the planning board will have site plan and design review. And the way I read it, it's almost as if we are the final arbiter, but that's not what it's a little unclear. But you're saying that this would go through the standard process.
We're not changing 509. We're going, we say it's 509 is controls.
Okay. I'm not asking about design, but I'm curious, are you thinking of this project as being rental or condominium?
Rental.
It is rental. And generally, what sorts of units are you thinking of having? What size units? What's the mix?
I'm not sure that that's been decided.
Well, you know, you have 103 units. You must have some.
Yeah, well, we have a
breakdown of,
preliminary.
103 3-bedroom units. I don't
Wait a
think.
minute, Todd will tell you.
Excuse me?
Todd's going to tell you.
I was going to pick it up. Hold on.
He's just looking it up.
So we currently have 5 3-bedroom units, Steve.
And so it's mostly 1s and 2s and
Mostly 1s and 2s.
Well, I
Ones
mean,
and
the reason
twos.
I'm interested is because, we are seeing a lot of very large, smaller developments with very large units. And, never mind any other design aspects. I think the town needs more small and moderate sized units for some of the types of residents that we'd like to have, like first time residents in Brookline, et cetera. So that's worth hearing. This site is actually, so I'm not sure I agree with my colleagues who think there ought to be a provision for commercial on the ground floor, but I would note that right now in the M district, which is the underlying zoning, I mean, we could change it in this overlay, but commercial is not permitted. At least most types of commercial are not even allowed in M district. But also, the town's response to the MBTA Communities Act was to create the M plus district. That was the town's legal response, although I think most people, at least on the planning board, know, and maybe most members of the public know, that the way the M plus district was created, it doesn't actually provide for much ability to build new housing, except for it included the Walnut High Brookline Housing Authority site. That's the one major project that would be allowed to happen. Does the M plus district give you any additional leeway in terms of what you can do here that the underlying M district does not?
No, because we're not in that district.
You're not in the, I thought everything in the M district was part of an M plus. Am I wrong about that? I don't know for
No,
sure.
Steve, the M 1.0 is not in the MBTA communities overlay.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then never mind that question.
I thought you brought some up that I had missed in the drafting.
Well, it's been a while since that M plus
was a big
district was
sigh
passed.
of relief
I
on my part.
didn't go back to look at what it specifically included. I want just one other question. If you consider doing this as a friendly 40B, the town's no longer subject to 40Bs. The town, I think, at least from the perspective of the Housing Advisory Board, which I sit on, and perhaps the town staff, I think, is willing to consider friendly 40Bs where, we don't have a hammer over our heads, but there's more of a negotiating what's reasonable. And of course, you would have to go from 15% on-site affordable to 20 or 25%. But this is a size of project where other developers have made 40Bs work.
That was the first probably year of our planning, was thinking about doing a 40B and then a friendly 40B. And the more we got into it, the zoning would have had to create too large a building to make it work, and there were other obstacles. But we certainly considered that. I believe we talked to the housing advisory staff. We talked to planning about it, and it was decided to do that. The road to the most success was to do a market rate building and follow the 15%. But it was fully explored in detail.
I do remember seeing this project, including plans, a couple of years ago. Maybe that was at the time I was thinking about
right.
it. 40B.
Yes, and that's how Margaret Murphy first got on our team, and we fully explored it, and it was decided in the town. I didn't really disagree that this would be a faster and more compact way of utilizing that site and the tax revenue.
Okay, I think that's it for me for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll go to Mark and then Linda.
Yeah, I guess my comment would be I'm not in favor of including commercial in this area. I don't think it's going to be consistent with that part of the massing that already exists in the area beyond John Street. And it certainly isn't consistent with what was proposed in the 12-story building that was at least initially conceived for Waldo Durgan. So, I mean, I like the idea of street parking and being able to use that area for temporary or 15-minute, half-hour parking, that sort of thing. I think that's really necessary. I actually live in and around the area, and so I guess my comment would be that I think the opening up to commercial is not a good idea.
A question on the street parking. I'm looking at Google Earth. Looks like street parking on Pleasant Street is on the library side across the street.
It's on both sides. It's on both sides, and it's along John Street too, where where the side of that building is suggested there. So I mean, I think you could keep the street parking, if we have a reasonably orchestrated ground floor in a similar fashion, the way it's shown along Beacon Street at Pelham Hall. There's parking in front of that building also. So I think that we need parking, ad hoc parking in and around that area.
Who parks in that lot currently? Those are private spaces that are rented?
Yeah,
Yes.
They're rented month to month to a variety of different types of people.
Okay, none of that's used by the library in any way.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mark, did you have anything?
No, that's it.
Thank you. All right, Linda?
Well, just to show we're not in lockstep, I would probably want the option of commercial there. I think times change. I think needs change. I'm also an acolyte of Jane Jacobs and Eyes on the Street. And I think that you just don't know how things are going to pan out in the future. And we talked about this on the Webster Street development. And I think I think it should be an option. The other thing, whether to help this case or harm it, the notion of how tall are these buildings around the site that you're trying to fit into. That is the proposed Waldo Durgan, the existing, what is that? The one behind, and Pelham Hall. What are the heights? We don't have to see them, but I think to argue for an 85-foot height limit would be instructive to know one way or the other how that fits in.
So Pelham Hall is, I believe, 81 feet. And the BHA building is, so off the top of my head, Mike Bro or Anthony, was it,
It showed up on one of your plans.
It's a combination. The roof itself, I think, is at 78, and then the penthouse actually is about 18 feet higher.
And I closed it, but remind me, Polly, the Waldo Durgan Overlay
Yes.
District has a maximum height for the corner. Is that comparable, 85 feet?
No, I think it's a 14-story
Yeah, much taller.
Taller, okay,
hotel and then a 12-story apartment building.
okay.
The apartment building is what's on the corner, the 12-story.
So even if that project doesn't go forward, the overlay zoning independently exists and somebody else could develop within that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone could still build a different 14-story building on that corner?
Correct.
Okay. Steve, I thought your hand go
Yeah,
back up.
I
and then
went
Blair.
back up. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the parking. I know it's sometimes contentious when even a private parking lot, which has provided neighborhood parking, is replaced. I mean, we had a case a couple years ago on Auburn Street.
Great, yes.
And is a lot of that parking currently used by residents of Pelham Hall or just general people in the neighborhood? And do you have any kind of a plan for what happens to those people who've used that as parking?
Yes, one of the benefits of Nordblum owning a lot of rental property in the area, their experience has been that the tenant parking is not a sought-after amenity in that area because of the transit nature of the area. So we believe that with 60 parking spaces in our new development, we would still be able to handle the neighborhood demand for parking.
So
As
you
you,
would,
I just saw from the pictures, it's underutilized. It's not a strong demand for it, but we do think we would be able to still handle neighborhood parking.
so you would potentially make some of the parking in the building available for neighborhood non-residents of the building?
Absolutely.
Okay, just going back a couple of things. I guess I agree with Linda that I would certainly not require ground floor commercial in this building, but under the overlay, it might make sense to make it an option.
Well, that's something, the problem, the zoning is done. It maybe at some point we'd go back after the 509 and change it, but I can't change the zoning after 30 people signed it.
I see. Okay. One last thing I'd like to say is actually the Sussman House, the BHA building, is actually 9 stories, but the floor-to-floor heights in that building are less than what you're proposing for 7 stories. And if you go just a little bit further down Pleasant Street to Freeman Street, you have Dexter Park, which is a number of 9-story buildings. And I guess the address is 135 Pleasant Street, right across Freeman from Dexter Park, are a couple of 6-story buildings. So, I mean, there is height up and down Pleasant Street, not just in the immediate vicinity of this site.
Thank you, Steve. Just a reminder, because Linda mentioned it on the Webster Street project, it was at the DAT that even though zoning would have required some ground floor commercial, in that particular case, it didn't make sense to the team looking at it. And so we're able to get more units instead of the ground floor commercial. So within that process, in that normal DAT process, we're still able to make adjustments like that. So to Attorney Allen's point, it doesn't have to be in the zoning for it still to happen, that be evaluated.
Well, I mean, the commercial is not allowed in a
Right. We would have to go back and amend it if in fact in the DAT that came up, we have plenty of time because we could pivot with an approval and amend the zoning if that
We
was.
would actually prefer, Polly, if it's allowed, is a management office, a leasing office on the ground floor.
Well,
So that we could activate that with a Nordblom. We do self-manage, we manage on site. And so with the sale of Pelham Hall, we've lost our real management office. So if it were part of the building as an ancillary use, a leasing office, maybe that's a way to bridge the gap between activation and true commercial space.
That's correct. You would be allowed to do that.
Okay.
Go to Blair.
Oh, I just wanted to emphasize, if I wasn't clear, that I wasn't requiring commercial in my suggestion, but including that. And if it is possible to get the additional signatures. What I like about that is it starts to establish, a precedent in the area. But I think the only other question is outstanding in my mind is in discussing this with the planning office, was there any thought of expanding the area? Because this is not about a specific building, it's about upzoning and the availability of residential in this place. So that M1 zone, I'm not sure how extensive that is and whether
Yeah,
this should
so
be expanded.
Blair, actually, this is not, a planning office proposal. It's
No, I
a.
understood that, but you said you reviewed it. I'm fine. I just think the
we-
question's
we reviewed it
important.
in the sense of reviewing what it says, but we have, it's not up to us to, at this point.
So this is not a spot zoning concern here.
No, not at all.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, in the interest of time, I appreciate the overview. They're very helpful. We have updates on 2 other zoning warrant articles still to go. So Attorney Allen, did you get what you were hoping in terms of the ability to share the project? The zoning?
Very beneficial, and I thank you, Matt, and members of the board, and we look forward to working with you after the approval of this zoning article by town meeting.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we have status reports on the Chestnut Hill commercial areas. Also the ADUs, or the accessory dwelling units. So I'm not sure who is going to give the Chestnut Hill. Is Meredith here?
I'm gonna actually call Meredith. I think we should just start with the ADU.
start
I
with the-
believe that Emily is here. Oh, wait a minute, Meredith is here. I'm so sorry.
I just reserved it. Okay, great.
Meredith is here.
Meredith, if you could show yourself.
That's my fault. I didn't let her unmute. She should be good now.
Hello, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I had a quick update on the Chestnut Hill zoning and design guidelines. I wanted to thank you again for all of the time and effort you put into reviewing the draft zoning and the design guidelines. We got a lot of helpful feedback, which we are working on incorporating into the final draft of the zoning. And I did quickly put together, I know Maria sent out the draft minutes from the workshop last week, which I think touches upon a lot of sort of the key takeaways that we've been working on incorporating. So just very quickly, to be respectful of everyone's time, this is an overview of all of the edits and additions we're incorporating into the draft zoning as takeaways from the past 2 discussions with the planning board. And I'm gonna talk through the zoning ones and a couple slides ahead, but I did want to flag that we did reduce the minimum lot size from ½ acre to 20,000 square feet, which was a recommendation, I think, specifically from Blair, which I think is very well taken. So we did make that adjustment for the majority of the sub-districts, and the smaller neighborhood mixed-use sub-districts, the minimum lot size is 15,000 square feet. And then we also have made some adjustments to setbacks along Boylston, Tully, and Holly Lane, reduced maximum building height along Tully Street. We're working on adding in some more flexibility in terms of the tree canopy requirements, and we're also removing the frontage ratio requirement, which is talked about in the zoning, and keeping in the design guidelines, but sort of adding additional context and some more requirements and review criteria regarding large site planning. So that's going to be a new section of the design guidelines. So the design guidelines, we are at a point in our work with our consultant Sasaki where we do not have a lot of remaining funding. So we need to be really strategic about how we're using the limited amount of time and resources we have with Sasaki in this fiscal year. So we don't have a draft or an updated draft of the design guidelines reflecting these changes, but I did just want to share that, this overview on the slide are the new elements we're going to work on incorporating with Sasaki. So the next time the planning board reviews the design guidelines, probably along with the updated zoning as part of the warrant article review process, it will reflect these changes. And similar to, you know, how we prepared for our past two conversations with the planning board, we might be pulling in some planning board members to review our work with Sasaki to make sure that we are accurately capturing the request the planning board wanted to see. So within the zoning, this is not Sasaki's work. This is me tinkering on Canva. But I did want to just sort of give the visual indication of we are limiting the height along Tully Street to 88 feet or 7 stories, and that's within 30 feet of Tully Street. I think that was the number that the planning board had landed on in your workshop. So we'll be incorporating that into the height diagrams and then updating the zoning envelope to reflect that change as well. And in terms of the setback requirements, I think one of the takeaways, and there was a lot of discussion at the workshop about wanting to, you know, take advantage of the opportunity to create sort of larger sidewalks and an enhanced pedestrian experience along Boylston Street, particularly to provide some balance and contrast to the street across the street from the study area. So we are adding a minimum 10-foot setback along Boylston Street and all of the sub-districts with the exception of the NMU, which is already a pretty narrow block and is going to be challenging for redevelopment. So I think we're not looking to add that additional constraint, particularly on this block of the NMU, but it's applied everywhere else and it can be reduced by special permit. And we are not specifying sort of a reduced by a certain amount. We're giving the planning board the flexibility to review on sort of a case-by-case basis. And we're also applying that minimum 10-foot setback to Tully Street and Holly Lane, which is another big point of discussion from the workshop. And those are the key updates. So we're working on finalizing the draft zoning, and we'll certainly share that with you as soon as it's ready for prime time.
Appreciate that update, Meredith. Any planning board members have any follow-up questions? That was fairly easy to follow.
Just one, Matt.
Yep.
I appreciate including the guidelines for some variation in facades, for facades that are over 200 feet long. I know there's something about that on facades facing Boylston Street. I remember making the point, what about facades that are perpendicular to Boylston? I would reduce that number from 200 to something less. 200 is a long way to go before you have to have a bay or some articulation feature. That'd be my one comment on these. I'm appreciative of the other things you've done based on the meeting we had, but that would be one further comment.
Go ahead, Meredith.
Point taken, Steve, could you throw out some numbers and just give us an indication of something that
100 feet,
the planning board
150. I mean, other places, I think if you look at our Harvard Street zoning, of course, we don't have sites anywhere near that big. There's something like, I don't know, you can't go more than 50 feet or 20. I don't remember what Harvard Street is, but I would at least cut it in half to 100 feet, where you need, in a facade of that length, you have to have some articulation. Look at the project we just saw on, it's just the rendering of 26 Pleasant Street. I don't know how long that facade was, but that was full of balconies and bays and things like that that make a building, whatever else you may think of its scale, activate that facade.
Just to ask, because we've talked about this a couple times, there will be a design advisory team on the project. Would you not anticipate that would be part of an iterative feedback loop between the planning board and the DAT members and the developer? Because my guess is it's contextual, right? It's based on the proportion of the building, not necessarily a plan dimension.
Are you asking me or?
Yeah, I'm thinking like the Homewood Suites Hotel on Route 9. I would have liked more articulation, right? That's an example of a 5-story, very, very long building. But if it's articulated as a series of 50-foot wide blocks that share a podium, you may not, that's what 100-foot blocks that share a podium, you may not want to articulate that. Leave it to the architects to propose something, and then the DAT would work with them to give feedback and guidance if it's not doing what we think it should do in terms of breaking down that mass. Where is the best place for it to live, I guess is the question.
Well, we got onto this topic because there was language in the zoning that required insets facing Route 9 and I think maybe also Heath Street. It didn't say anything about bays projecting, which I think it could. And I was, but you know, the site is like 400 feet deep, so there can clearly be very long facades that are perpendicular to those streets. And I think they need some, we need to require, I think, some articulation. And I think, you know, a bay every 200 feet, or you know, is not enough articulation from my perspective.
I think it would be taken care of in a DAT. I can't imagine somebody wants a 300-foot. I mean, how are they going to sell that puppy? It just seems very, you know, unfortunate. I'm just not sure it's in zoning.
Okay,
But
those are my thoughts.
I thought, yeah,
Isn't it just a guideline?
I'm sorry.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, don't get him started. We get the pirate jokes. It's not worth it. But I guess it is a question to the rest of the planning board on where you think the appropriate placement is.
I mean, you could make it in there and just as a to be reviewed by DAT to you know, the modulation of massing you know, will be an important consideration in the review of the project. You could put something that gives the heads up to a developer of what will be required, so it's not a surprise that they show up and the planning board is making all kinds of suggestions that they weren't planning on.
Maybe you can put that in parentheses, e.g. every 200 feet plus minutes, right?
No,
we don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something.
Okay, whatever.
All right. Thank you, Meredith. Appreciate the update.
Thank
And
you.
then the other one is on the ADU, and
That is correct.
Emily just came off of or came onto the screen. Are you going to be giving us the update on that one?
Yes, I'm going to give you a quick update. Since we were here last at your meeting, there has been added language to try to ensure that the protected use ADU is being used as an ADU within state restrictions. So within the definition section, the language is added as permanent to the ADU definition. And then also the state's definition of dwelling unit that includes the permanent language as well was added in to the protected use ADU definition. So we feel like that will give more staying power to the kitchen and the sanitary areas and the separate living areas to make that stronger. The self-certification was added to the section 12 for the building commissioner to the owner to file with the building commissioner self-certifying that the ADU will maintain a separate and permanent sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities. And then in section 13, in the case of discontinued use or change in ownership, so before applying for building permits to the building commissioner, the owner will file a sworn affidavit attesting that they are either still in compliance for using that space as an ADU or are in lawful non-conformance. Other changes include some cleanup language. We talked to building staff yesterday, which include taking out the 6-foot setbacks because there are different setbacks in different zoning districts. So that, to avoid confusion, was taken out. And then just cleaning up the language in the short-term rental section. It was a little bit wordy. Want to make sure that owners reading this will understand what they need to do with short-term rentals being restricted. And then I just wanted to do a quick reminder for us complying to the bylaw, including the Affordable Homes Act and EHLC's protected use ADU regulations. So we must allow protected use ADUs by right and not have more restrictive regulations for protected use ADUs than principal dwelling units in zoning districts that allow single family residential We must not have more restricted dimensional standards than what is required for the most permissive regulation, which includes principal dwelling, single family, and accessory structures. And then we must not conflict with the rights granted under the Dover Amendment for protected use ADUs. And Maria, feel free to add whatever I missed.
That was great, Emily. I just want to say, because Dick Benka is here, Dick had raised an important issue about a requirement in section 5.63 regarding accessory buildings. And if they are located within 75 feet of the street line, and we are honoring that. We had been a little bit more permissive than that and had not applied that requirement, and we agree with Dick, and we would have that be applicable to protected use ADUs.
And I think Dick has his hand up as well.
Yeah, so because I said at the beginning, I'm not going to take public comments during this meeting. Inclined to not, but I also wonder if Dick just has a question for Emily. So let me start with the planning board first, then depending on time, Dick will maybe let you ask your question, assuming it's of staff and not of the board. Blair, you have your hand up for this one?
A couple of quick questions. One is under section 8. Are you not allowed by law to have separate ownership? I was just wondering about that. That's in the state regs, and because it didn't seem to me to be a problem about whether you could separate the ADU in some kind of sale if a building was condominiumized that had an ADU.
So Emily, we've discussed this, and this is the Attorney General has provided guidance on this very topic. Normally, we cannot in zoning regulate ownership, and that is under the federal 1978 Condominium Act.
Mm-hmm.
But because we are able to regulate use, and this is an accessory use, we are able to regulate this as accessory to the principal use, and therefore we are able to stipulate that protected use ADUs shall only be rented and cannot be sold as condominiums. And that also has an important affordability component.
Okay.
So we are able to do that. That is legal.
Okay, I just disagree with that requirement, but I'll leave it at that. And lastly, in terms of short-term rentals under number 10, why limit it to 30 days? I mean, we really wouldn't want to have ADUs created as at least I wouldn't, as, just to be rented, as, Airbnb places. Because then it's just basically like a hotel use, not really addressing the housing need. So
that goes back to, I think short-term rentals cannot be leased. Short-term rentals can be leased for less than a certain amount of time, like on the monthly basis. But it is okay, it is legal per the state to prohibit ADUs from being used as short-term rentals. And again, that goes into the availability of affordable housing. So
well, that's why I'm saying, why not make it 3 months so that you would allow someone to rent an ADU for someone who might be on a summer, fellowship at, the medical center or something. But you're trying to really cut out people who would just be.
People could, it's not less than 27 days. So, ostensibly you could rent an ADU for 28 days or 3 months.
No, I understand. I was just thinking about making it longer, not shorter.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Right now, we're just trying to get this approved. We do understand that we might have to revisit certain policies that undermine the intent that the town has for its ADUs. But right now, this is the 3rd time we've gone to town meeting with an ADU bylaw. And in this case, the Attorney General has really disapproved the majority of it. So we really have to benefit the town and have something on the books. We're turning away a lot of people who are interested in constructing ADUs as well. So I take your point, but we just might have to consider that for 2.0.
Okay.
Thank you, Blair. Thank you, Maria. Mark.
Maria, I guess this is a question for you. There was a section in the bylaw where you could rent to two, up to two, or I think it was up to two or maybe three unrelated people in your home. Is that still part of the bylaw? And how does that figure in, or maybe it doesn't figure in at all to
Yep.
the included ADU in the main unit?
Yep. So it's a really good question. And what this actually goes into was we did this in 2023 when we were working on multifamily zoning, especially in compliance with the state MBTA Communities Act. Brookline actually had a definition of family under Article 2 that was not consistent with fair housing laws. So it was, if you recall at the time, as late as 2023, the definition of family said that you could not have more than, I think, 4 unrelated people in a household. And that is not legal. So what we can do is I can send you, all of you, the newly adopted family definition of family that is consistent with fair housing laws. So there is no limit on, like, say, like the number of unrelated people. That is because that would be inconsistent with federal laws.
But we are also talking about a maximum size for ADUs of 900 square feet at this point.
Well, let me ask you a question. Say you're developing an ADU within a house, like one of these hunkamunka Victorians we have, and it makes sense that it's over 900 square feet. I mean, just, do you have to take out a closet or something, or how does this get resolved?
So, that's another excellent question. And right now, we're just not able to get an answer from the Attorney General's office regarding whether we can change the definition of protected use ADU to exceed 900 square feet. The implications of that are that if we don't have a definition that is consistent with state law, we're creating another category of ADU. And that would mean that we would ostensibly be allowing 2 ADUs per lot instead of a maximum of 1. So this unit size, especially for families, is definitely a concern of, even I think members of the Housing Advisory Board, but we don't expect the question to go away. So again, we just might have to wait for 2.0.
Yeah. Picky.
Thank you, Linda.
I know we're trying to finish by 10, and I know when you saw Dick Benka's hand up, you said, well, we're not taking comments from members of the public, but Dick's version of the ADU draft is on our agenda. So I'm thinking that Dick may want to say something about where his version is going.
He may be a petitioner. He may be submitting an alternative warrant article. I don't know if he's still doing that, but maybe he can tell us.
Yeah.
Cameron, would you allow Dick Benka to speak? We can find out what his hand raise is about. And if it's an update on his warrant article, I think that's fair. We had both presented last meeting.
You're all set to unmute, Dick.
Okay.
Hey, thank you very much. Yes, I do have a couple of comments, and first I want to thank the Planning Department for addressing what was a major issue, and that was the issue of the accessory structure setbacks being applied everywhere on a lot. I do have a comment about some ambiguity in the language and the way that was done, which I will discuss. I just received their version yesterday evening, last night, and we actually have a Housing Advisory Board subcommittee meeting coming up at 10:30. So there is some ambiguity in the language that I think can be easily addressed, but I think we are on the same wavelength with that. So I thank you. I do have an alternative warrant article. I hope I don't have to file it, frankly. And let me just address a couple of other issues very quickly. The planning department version eliminates any requirement for open space. My version retains the requirement for open space with language that Jonathan Simpson approved and added that we believe complies with the state regulations requiring the most permissive applied to the principal dwelling, single family dwelling, or accessory structure. I think it would be ill-advised to eliminate any open space requirements when you have a protected use ADU. That is what the planning department version does now, and that I think is something that I would hope would be addressed. The version that I proposed allows a protected use ADU that complies with state law. It does not allow a second ADU on the property. This is what was in our existing zoning. The planning department version would allow additional ADUs on the property. There's a slight difference there.
By special permit though, right?
By
No,
special permit.
we would not. If there's messy language, we can discuss it at HAB.
Okay, great.
But we
Then
we don't allow a second ADU.
Okay, then we can clean that up. Wonderful. So we're ticking things off here. There's some question of continuity language, and I would, if you have a minute, I would love the planning board's thoughts about the continuity language in the draft that the planning department circulated. And this is on page 7 of their draft. Which says, when the owner of an ADU plans to discontinue its use and remove the living, sleeping, eating, and cooking areas so that they're no longer permanently separate from the principal dwelling, then prior to submitting a building permit application, the owner shall file with the building commissioner a sworn affidavit attesting to the principal dwelling's compliance or lawful compliance with the zoning bylaw. Our intent, my intent, I think the intent of the Housing Advisory Board, the intent of the Planning Department is to preserve the ADU as an ADU, as a separate dwelling unit. My concern is that this language, you might not need a building permit to just incorporate a so-called ADU into a principal dwelling. And therefore, this would not preclude somebody from removing the ADU from use if a building permit was not required. You could have a cooking facility in there that could be part of your den or your rec room. You'd have a bathroom. Everybody loves a bathroom. You'd have a sleeping area that could become a den or an office. And you wouldn't necessarily need a building permit. So I'm concerned that this really does not necessarily preserve the ADU as an affordable unit. And I would love your thoughts on that. And then there's another point that I think is the conversion of an existing non-conforming building. I think probably the Planning Department language covers this, but the state regulation just talks about conversion or use of an existing building. I had an explicit provision in, or have an explicit provision in, that when you're expanding that, you have to comply with zoning with the dimensional requirements. So I think perhaps that's covered. I made it explicit, but those are my issues. And I will say, I think we are, and I'm very thankful that we're moving toward an agreement on this, and with the second ADU, we're even closer. So thank you, Maria.
Maria, can I ask on the continuity language, is that something the state is looking for? Or is that something that's coming from us as a town? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Sorry. This was a concern of both Dick and the chair of the subcommittee, Jonathan Klein. And there was some really rigorous language proposed. And the building commissioner was really concerned that there was going to be some overreach and potential conflict with the state building code, which regulates certificates of occupancy, whereas zoning does not. So we do understand that people can build an ADU and then never rent it or never use it as such. And then basically it's like people who are living in the principal structure are also using the protected use ADU. We don't really have control about how people use that space. We do have a concern, and this is the language that we are using as an alternative to what Dick proposed. And that is to say, if there is a situation where someone does build a protected use ADU, and let's say a year later, or no matter how long later, they want to rip out the separate eating, sanitation, sleeping facilities, and basically extend the use or have no separation from that of the principal structure. We are asking them before they submit a building permit that they sign an affidavit that they comply with the zoning bylaw or lawfully non-conformant. So they might have gotten a special permit way back when, whatever. So, you know, it's meant to have an awareness built in. I do understand that there are some cases where you don't need a building permit. But again, this is not something that the state executed perfectly. And in this respect, we are really just going to accrue some issues that the state is going to have to deal with. And at the local level, do our very best, but we can't run afoul of the state building code.
Yep. All right, thank you. Emily, I saw your hand go up as well. Did you have more to add?
Yeah, Maria did a fabulous job of explaining that. I think just a reminder that we cannot be more restrictive with ADUs than principal dwelling units or single family. So if we ask them to file something like that or more standards on ADUs, the state is asking us not to be more restrictive and have more regulations on ADUs.
Yeah, just to clarify what the issue is, the concern here is that by calling something a protected use ADU, you get 900 additional square feet. And that could push you over the zoning FAR limits. When Roger Blood and I were taking our first go through on this prior to the new regulations coming out, the questions we were getting were from a McMansion developer. How do you count square footage? What about this? What about a stairway? What about a hallway? And our concern, both Jonathan Klein's and my concern, and I think some of the concerns on the HAB, is that this could be gamed. And we're looking for a way to address the issue. I think we started out by having it recorded, and that Jonathan Simpson, town council, had, and their office had problems with, so it devolved to this. I don't know whether there's another way to address the issue, but
so if I know we're limited, and I don't mean to cut Dick off, and I do appreciate where Dick is coming from, and I will just have to say, keep in mind that the way the Brookline's zoning is, you depend a lot on FAR. And if you do more of a neighborhood by neighborhood zoning, then you can think about getting around FAR and having some geometric limits for building envelope and footprints. And that can better deal with some of the McMansioning. But I don't think the ADU, I don't think the tail can really wag the dog when it's really the zoning itself that has these loopholes. So I just want to say that as a caveat moving forward, and we are doing some neighborhood zoning this year where we have an opportunity to address that very thing, Dick, and I'd love to keep you apprised of how that goes. The other thing I do want to clarify about the second unit, keep in mind there might be pre-existing ADUs that are lawfully permitted that do not meet the definition of protected use ADU. And the state says they can exist, but you still have to allow a protected use ADU. And that is an occasion where you might end up with two. on one lot. And that's not because the planning department is doing something very permissive here.
No, I agree, Maria, and frankly, both your version, the planning department version, and my version at the very end have an explicit provision talking about ADUs lawfully in existence prior to February 2nd, 2025. So
Correct.
that
Yes.
is covered in both.
Yes, excellent. Okay.
Great. Well, I am 5 minutes late for a meeting, so
All right.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
end the
too.
hearing, but I appreciate the updates. Thank you all for the work you're doing behind the scenes to get this
Okay.
ready for the closing of the warrant. And we will see you all at our next hearing.
Which is the planning board meets tomorrow evening as well.
And just a reminder, I'm not able to attend.
I think we have quorum though, right? Yes, confirmed. We should be good.
Thank you.
Emily, before you hang up, could you have Maria give me a call and I could mention to her the language issue?
Well, we have, okay.
Sure,
I
yeah.
mean, we could do it at the HAB subcommittee. meeting.
It's in 20 minutes, so I'll see if I can get a hold of her.
Well,
If
we
you-
have another meeting. That's why she's off.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right,
Bye.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.